Hi, I'm Natalie and welcome back. Today I'm here because I was asked to give my advice on what I think about a sexless marriage or how I would handle a sexless marriage. So my biggest platform of followers are on Twitter. Twitter helped build me. I really like it there a lot. So every now and then I will throw my link out so that people can ask me anonymous questions. A gentleman popped through and asked me this question that reads, "My marriage has no intimacy. As a man, it's hard. I have remained faithful, but how does one navigate the conversation? If we don't have sex, then I need it from somewhere. And not just sex, but basic cuddling and affection." And they hashtagged it, "Feel lost and alone." Now, when I posted this question onto my page, I asked them to DM me so that I could, go through with them. I didn't realize that at the time I was doing that, a lot of my other followers were screenshotting it and also sending it to me because they also struggle in this situation. And it's not just men. And I really want to tell you this right now. It is not just men who feel stuck in marriages that no longer offer intimacy and no longer offer sex. There are several women who have come out and spoken to me about this and the desire to either open the marriage or change it completely by removing all intimacy and getting it somewhere else, or by vacating the marriage altogether. So when I went through and I read all the DMs and the concerns that people were having, the one thing I realized is that people let their sexless marriage and their marriages void of intimacy go for years and years and years until they get to the point where they're not really sure how to address the situation. It's like it started as a little bridge, but over time it became so big. And then when the sex stops and the intimacy stops, the vulnerability stops, the talking stops, and before you know it, you really just look and feel like roommates. And maybe it's easier to stay together because you have children and it's expensive. But only one of you is okay in that marriage. And I would argue that for many, even you're not okay in that. Being on autopilot, if that's what's going on, isn't a win. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to lay it out. I'm not a therapist or a counselor. And I can also sympathize and appreciate that some people, lose their sex drive. Some people have medical issues. I don't know about those things. What I'm here to talk about is if you're in a sexless marriage and it's just because, it's lost its passion and the other person no longer wants to have, that affection with me. That's what I'm here for. What are your options with that? Now, for me, I opened my marriage, and I did that because I knew that my sex drive could come and go, and sometimes up for 6 months. So even though I was okay in it, I knew my husband would not be. And I didn't want to ask him to be, because what if it didn't come back? So as I get these questions, I really thought about what can you do? The first thing that you could do, is bring them back to the table. It's time to get back and talk about the marriage again. Maybe it's been a long time. Maybe we haven't talked about it, but it needs updating. Because of the marriage that contains 2 people, at least one of you isn't thriving, you're not fulfilled, and it's almost like it hurts. You're in this relationship with somebody, a marriage, and there's no affection, and they're not interested in it anymore. But where does that leave you? Does that mean you should just automatically give up your drive and ignore that it exists? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that if it was asked of me, it's a hard pass. Here's the deal. If a few years into the marriage, one of the participants changes the rules, let's say it's a monogamous marriage, and my husband all of a sudden says, you know what, Natalie? I'm not interested anymore. Like, I just don't have that sex drive. I just don't want to have sex anymore. I just don't. Now, I'm at the table with my husband, and I know he does not want to have sex anymore. Maybe it's just with me, I don't know. But at this point in time in our marriage, he does not want to have sex and we are not intimate. So now I'm at the table and I want to know then, where am I getting my intimacy from? Where am I getting my sex from? Because I don't have a desire to give it up. That's part of who I am. That's a way that I express myself, and that's a way that I feel whole. My sex is part of who I am. Unless I choose to give it up or I feel like giving it up, nobody has the right to ask me to give it up. And here's another thing. If my husband comes to the table a few years in and says he's removing sex and he's removing intimacy, you better believe I'm removing forever. Because unless we find a pathway through where my needs can also be fulfilled, I'm no longer on board. There's no way. What I want matters, and who I am matters. Now, I have an open marriage, so that doesn't happen here. But I wasn't always open. So when people are in monogamous relationships, marriages, and the intimacy and sex stops on one side, what is the other person to do? Well, you bring your partner to the table and you express why the relationship isn't fulfilling to you. Let your partner show up for you. Sometimes it's as easy as just getting off autopilot. Life becomes, busy in life. If we have kids, if we're stuck in a routine, it's so easy to get sucked in. We get tired, all those things. So sometimes it's just as easy as coming back to the table and being like, hey, what happened to us? Let's get back to us. All bonds need to be nurtured no matter what. Whether it's with your wife, your children, your husband, your dog, your mother, it doesn't matter. All bonds need to be nurtured. You cannot just let it go and expect for the relationship to flourish. So, if you are in a relationship that is monogamous and you are not fulfilled because you're not getting the intimacy you require and desire to thrive, it's time to go to your partner and express this to them. And if you feel afraid about this because of the outcome, just remember, you're at the table because you need change. You need that. You're not thriving in your life and your relationship, and you need that change. So yeah, change is going to be scary, but so is whatever you're doing, and that's why you're here. It's always going to be tough because maybe we have a family, who knows? It's always going to be tough when we're going to express something that is going to change the entire course of our future. And we don't know if that person's coming along. And we don't know how they're going to respond. And a lot of people will just forgo the conversation and live almost in acceptance as they build resentment because they're too afraid of how their partner will receive the information. You're going to the table with somebody that you love. You want them on board. You at least want them to listen. You have to get them there. And in order to do that, you have to be honest and open about what's going on with you. And that's tough, but it is absolutely necessary if you are going to change the dynamic of your marriage. You cannot expect it to just come back around without any work or acknowledgement. If you can't speak to your partner about what's going on with you, I'm inclined to believe that sex isn't the biggest issue, or lack of sex isn't the biggest issue. If you're afraid of this, go and find a counselor. Have somebody there to help you untangle the wires. Help somebody there to help you gain clarity. Your feelings matter, and your life matters, and what you want matters. Your marriage is going to affect your entire life because that's how it's designed. So if you're not happy in your marriage, you have almost no shot of being genuinely happy in your life. Let your partner show up for you. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say, I still don't want sex. Okay, they still don't want sex or intimacy. So now what are you going to do? Well, can we open the marriage? Can we evolve the marriage where it becomes a partnership and we keep everything, but I'm allowed and encouraged to get that type of interaction elsewhere? Or are we accepting that all things reach completion? And perhaps that's what's happened here. And if that's the case, it might take a little radical acceptance to move forward. But what I'm telling you is that you don't have to accept a sexless marriage if you don't want to. You don't. Go to the table. Talk about how you feel. Talk about what you want. Bring that back. Years into marriage and we just slip into a routine and like coast. And then all of a sudden one day we're like, what happened? Where'd everything go? And then you start looking for it. You don't have to. Start now. And I'll tell you this. If you're struggling in your marriage, there's a really good chance your partner is too. So go to the table, find out why. Just have the conversation. This is somebody that you love and respect and want for the rest of your life. You're just talking, right? This is your person. Bring them back in, tell them how you feel, and whatever the outcome is, it'll be for the best because it was brought about through truth and honesty. And really, that's all we can do. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have anything else you'd like me to discuss, let me know. Thanks for joining me.